as far back as 2. And the reason I remember as far back as 2 is because my dad was driving a hay wagon with horses pulling him. And they were coming down the lane and they got spooked. And they threw him off and he broke his leg. So I had this vision right now of my walking across the room with pillows to give him. That was my first thing that I remembered. There were 2 houses on the farm. One was the big one that was kind of a Georgian clapboard house that was built, I understand, in 1830. We had a dairy farm. He had an all Jersey dairy. And I think it was about, if I remember right, about 36 cows, which doesn't seem much in these days and times. But to milk my aunt, which he was doing, I do remember when the electricity was turned on. He was so excited because he got to have a milking machine for his cows. Dairy farms were all up and down Route 10. It was fun to go with my dad taking me and milk cans in the truck every morning up to the Ross Mezzan farm, where the Grimes truck would come and pick up everybody's milk along the way. Just the jingle of I can hear it right now, of the milk cans together. Those kinds of things are really neat. The big oak trees, we had 5 huge white oaks in the front yard of the house. And I mean, they were like 80-foot things, and you'd lie in bed and just look up at them, and hear the owls hoot and toot. Those kinds of things are memories that I cherish. I do remember when the Nike site was put in. It was like 53, I think, or something like that. Whoever was in charge came over and told my dad he'd have to cut down the oak trees. And my dad said, if you don't have a missile big enough to get over my oak tree, you don't have much of a missile. They never came back. As I grew up, my brother and I just enjoyed being outdoors. I guess my mom would really have appreciated it, my liking to cook and do all the things in the house. But I was an outdoors person, and I wanted to see what was happening. And so I would walk, in the fields with my dad. I even tried my hand at milking cows and a few things like that. I had a little dog. This was a little tiny one when I got it. And I put it beside my bed in a little box, and when he was whining, I'd stick my hand down there, quiet him down. But that little dog followed us all around the farm. And he was able to go into the barn and climb up an upright ladder into the loft. He would push up and put his head between the next rung and pull himself up to the next one and the next one and the next one until he got up. The other exciting thing that happened in the loft was my brother raised about 100 Muscovy ducks every year. He dammed up this little stream, so we had a little pond for his ducks. And we spent a lot of time, with them. But the Muscovies flew, and so they would fly up in the barn loft. And they would hatch out in the barn loft. And they hatched quite a few. I don't recall counting them, but I would say at least 15 little ducks that would come out of a nest. And when they were ready, the mother duck would fly out and get on the ground and go whatever she was saying to them. And they would go up at the window and like, no thanks, so I'm not jumping out of this barn loft. And finally, one would do it. One would go, and this little fluffy duck would hit the ground, just go bounce like that, and roll along. It was just fine. And then the others would get brave enough to line up. We had several workhorses. One was rideable, and we did, and we hooked the horse up to a cart every now and then and took things where they needed to go on the farm. The other 2 were too wild to ride. I tried to ride one when I was in high school, but he kind of knocked me up against the barn, and I said, that's enough of that. The crops were mainly peanuts during that time, but peanuts and corn. Soybeans really came much later. But peanuts and corn and a lot of hay.
Let's take a look at a few examples taken in different parts of the country.
And then when the corn was ready, we eventually reached a point where there would be silage that they would put in the silo. We did some hunting on the farm. I learned to shoot a gun. And I remember when they let me go squirrel hunting by myself with my little dog. I think I was in the 6th grade. I brought back a squirrel, and I was all excited about that. During World War II, which I do remember, I have pictures of me with some soldiers that were in the encampment across from St. Louis, across from my granddad's farm. That was where the encampment was. I remember tanks. I remember trucks. And there was activity all up and down Route 10, all over the area during World War II. I mean, you could lay in the grass and look up, and those World War II planes were flying all over the place.
I just want to say your mom ran Miss Kitty's. This was famous. It was Miss Kitty's
kindergarten. Actually, the kindergarten wasn't in our mind right away. There were several mothers who wanted to go back to work and wanted somebody to keep their kids. She started doing activities with them, and it grew, and it grew, and it kept growing. She had it for 19 years. Most of the kids around town went to that kindergarten. The family itself does go back quite a ways. I think it's back into the 1600s. I can't remember at this point. But we would get a lot of information from England, from relatives. My grandmother would get it. And she would read these little papers that would come in the mail that said, all it said was, her name, the Oaks, Smithfield. As I grew up, I was very interested in music, but then my mother sang a lot. And so she sang to me from day one. We went to Ben's church, and I learned to sing just from her. And I sang in the church choir. Just as soon as I got into high school, I took all the, what college courses that were, all the math, all the English, all the whatever. And I thought, well, I really like music. Maybe I could teach music. My brother, he's a veterinarian, and when he came back, he set up a business on Route 10. Started it out of the milk run down on the farm. I think his first customer had chinchillas, and I'm thinking he did a cesarean on a chinchilla. I taught in Bloomington. I was in Northern Virginia for a while. When I came home, I was actually negotiating a job in Massachusetts. And so I stopped to see my mom and realized that she needed help. So I said, well, unpack. This is it. It was nice to come back to a lot of that. Some of it had changed a lot, but not like it is now.